Hello everyone, it's me, your average bonehead, Jay. 80 years. That's how long the Thomas the Tank Engine franchise has been around. This blue little bastard's been puffing along for 8 decades now. And I have to say, that's rather impressive. So in the spirit of the 80th anniversary, what better thing to talk about than a Thomas the Tank Engine movie? Although I already reviewed the 70th anniversary movie. Luckily for us, there's still lots to choose from. Thomas has had 14 movies in his run, and they all drastically range in quality. But for this special occasion, I think we should talk about something more cinematic. That's right, Thomas's only full cinematic adventure, the 2000 movie, Thomas and the Magic Railroad. That's right, Thomas's first adventure onto the silver screen, with big names, a big score, big adventure. There's no way that this movie could possibly... It's awful, isn't it? Alright, damn it. Yeah, there's no beating around the bush. Thomas and the Magic Railroad is a very flawed movie. And it's so weird that it is, because it came from the very people who made the original show itself. And yet, it feels completely different from the series, for understandable reasons. It's no secret that this movie had one hell of a production history. In fact, there's an entire other version of the movie out there, with deleted scenes and deleted characters and everything, though I don't really feel the need to go too much in depth with that. Lots of people have already covered it. To me, the biggest flaws of this movie can actually still be found in the finished product itself, and I want to take a look at them, to really explain why, to my non-Thomas viewers, the problems with this movie, coming from a Thomas fan. But also to explain that, despite all its problems, I love this movie. Yeah, kinda weird when you think about it, despite everything I'm about to say. So how does all the what I just said gonna make sense? Well, let's get right into Thomas and the Magic Railroad. The movie starts out pretty alright if you ask me, as the then narrator at the time, Alec Baldwin, introduces us to the ever-lovely island of Sodor.
This is the island of Sodor, where Thomas and his friends live. It's at one end of my special universe.
Hello, Thomas. Hello, James.
As we are introduced to Thomas the Tank Engine.
Hello! But he's running a little late today.
Thomas then arrives at a station Gordon is working at, and we get something that I actually really like about this movie. The mouths don't move.
But you weren't on time, little Thomas.
And you're being bossy, Gordon.
One common outside complaint of this movie that I do not agree with is that the faces of the engines don't move. Yeah, because they're not supposed to do that. Ignoring the obvious fact that these things are gauge 1 props, with already a bunch of shit in them to make their eyes work and them puff steam, there's also the fact that they're trains. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but in real life, trains don't have faces. So in a weird twisted way, their faces not moving makes them feel more real. Now obviously in a fully CGI animated world, the faces moving makes a lot more sense. But in a model live action world, I think their faces moving would have been more uncanny, even with them interacting with humans. If you guys really wanted the model props to have moving faces, well, season 12 is right there. Sweet night, Maz. But now putting that aside, the real best compliment I can give this movie is the voices for the engines. God damn did they almost nail every single one of them. Neil Crone voices Gordon, and the voice he gave him was just absolutely perfect. While I am used to the CGI series giving Gordon a more deeper voice, something about this pompous voice Neil Crone gave him just works infinitely better for Gordon.
I'm counting how many seconds late you are. What does that sign say?
And Mattel must have thought that too, because they got him back 20 years later to voice Gordon again in All Engines Go. Eddie Glenn voices Thomas, and yeah, this is my definitive Thomas voice. He gives the perfect tone for this character, giving him a rather nice, polite voice that matches our really useful engine, but also has a little bit of snark to it, which matches our cheeky, quick-to-anger little blue puffball.
I'm meeting Mr. Conductor. He's looking after us while Sir Topham Hatt takes a much-needed holiday.
Basically, anytime I try to do a Thomas voice, I always try to replicate this one. But anyways, Thomas and Gordon's usual banter is swiftly interrupted by a new character and our main antagonist known as Diesel 10, who apparently has returned, and he has plans.
I have unfinished business here, and I want to finish it fast!
the diesel ten's back!
I'm sure all of this will make sense later. But anyways, now that the complimenting is over, it's time to reach our first real problem. And that is, afterwards, we transition to the real world where we see Shining Time Station. For those of you who don't remember, or more likely don't know, Shining Time Station was the show that originally was used to vessel Thomas the Tank Engine and friends to the US during its original run, where original stories unique to the show would play out, but then a small magical man named Mr. Conductor, first played by Ringo Starr, then by George Carlin, would show up and tell stories to the kids about the magical island of Sodor, and thus it would transition into the Thomas episodes. After a while though, it became increasingly obvious that people were only coming to Shining Time for the Thomas episodes, so eventually the show was cancelled and it was just now Thomas and Friends. But for some reason it was decided that this movie would cross the two over again, despite Shining Time being cancelled for like 5 years at this point. And even stranger, rather than Shining Time just being a station on the island of Sodor, because that would make too much sense, they decided to make it so that Shining Time is in the real world and Sodor's its own world. Now, I will explain the universe-shattering implications that come from that later, because for now, you probably won't notice that problem when I say that I like the Shining Time Station song.
That points just round the bend to a place you'll find.
Yeah, I don't care if people call it generic, I really like this song, it just sounds so good to me. But anyways, enough of Shining Time, it's back to the island of Sodor, where we get to meet another engine, James, who has a voice.
Sandal fly, boot fly, shoe fly, that's it!
He's voiced by Susan Roman in this movie, yes, Sailor Jupiter. And obviously nothing against her as a voice actress, but she was just not the right pick for James. Now, it's not like I don't get what they're going for. She makes James sound like one of those snooty, pompous little boys. I can easily see him in one of those stupid looking suits and having a giant ass lollipop. But the problem is, James never came off as that young. So this higher pitched voice just doesn't really work for him.
You weren't concentrating, Thomas. Lucky for you that the buffers were there.
So personally, I think they should have just stuck with his original voice, the UK narrator, Michael Angelis.
My wheels were feeling worn out with work, so Sir Topham Hatt told me to think about all the ways I can be a really useful engine.
The recast for Percy makes a lot more sense, but I really think James would have worked a lot better in this movie had they just stuck with Angelis. But moving past that, we are properly introduced to Diesel 10, our main antagonist of the movie. This giant diesel engine with a hydraulic claw, who is also voiced by Neil Crone.
Because steam engines are cowardly, cranky, worn-out hunks of metal!
As he threatens the engines, saying that his evil plan is to find a lost engine named Lady and destroy her and
dominate you!
But Thomas shows that he is not afraid of Diesel 10. We then see this kid named Patch talking to this man named Billy Two Feathers. Woof! That's a name. Patch tells Billy that he's gonna help out the old hermit Burnett Stone, played by Peter Fonda, who, surprisingly, actually wanted to work on this movie. In fact, that's something I really want to talk about quickly. So many people were kind of surprised seeing big names like Alec Baldwin and Peter Fonda are attached to this movie. But when you go and look, you see that they had nothing but nice things to say about working on this movie and working with Britt Allcroft, despite the nightmarish production that this movie infamously had. And that just goes into something that I really respect about Britt. It's despite the fact that she made some questionable decisions with this movie, she still treated the people who worked on it really well. And it was proof that she didn't just want to make a generic kids movie. There was passion behind this movie, and you could say that about the show itself, which is why Thomas seemed to always attract people you would never expect to work with it. It just really goes to show how good of a person Britt Allcroft really was. Which is why I don't just respect the fact that she made the show, I respect the fact that she made this movie. Britt, you were great. May you rest in peace. That all being said, however, Peter Fonda's acting in this movie is weird. He plays Burnett Stone, the depressed caretaker of the mysterious lost magical engine, Lady, who gave life to all the other engines on Sodor. which, yeah, we'll get to that later. But Burnett Stone's whole thing is that he's depressed because he can't get Lady running again, and because he lost his wife Tasha before he had a chance to let her ride Lady. And I'm not gonna say Peter Fonda does a bad job at this, but I think he goes a bit too much in playing the depressed part. Like, again, I'm not gonna say, oh, he should have just phoned it in. I'm happy he's trying, but maybe he's trying a bit too hard with the whole depressed act, and he ends up acting like this throughout the entire movie, not just when he's reminiscing, but in just normal conversations as well. It gets to the point where he's kind of just a wet blanket every time we see him. And even more so, it makes the scenes at the ending of the movie where he's supposed to be acting more whimsical as the magic's now back in his life, all the more awkward. I hope that describes it well. Back on Sodor, we see Diesel 10 again as we are introduced to his cronies for the movie Splatter and Dodge.
I got a job for you, Spludge.
Actually, it's a splatter. and Dodge.
But I ain't got time to say both names.
Oh, well.
And I think it's at this moment I should point out that, yeah, Diesel 10 is a very, very comedic villain. Neil Crone is just hamming it up with this guy, and I think this was the best way to take such a silly concept like Diesel 10, but they still managed to work in a few intimidating moments with him to keep him, in my eyes, a well-rounded villain. He really is probably the best part of this movie.
I'll get him too, with Pinchy. Ow, Pinchy! I hate it when you do that.
Afterwards, back at Shining Time, we are introduced to Mr. Conductor, played by Alec Baldwin. And remember what I said about Peter Fonda? Baldwin is basically the opposite. Yes, he is 100% overacting and trying way too damn hard to be whimsical, but it wraps all the way around into being so hilariously endearing, you can't help but smile every time he's on screen.
It is a very important day. I'm going to the island of Sodor. You know, it's the only place in my universe where I really fit in size-wise.
Anyways, Mr. Conductor has been summoned to the island of Sodor by Sir Topham Hatt to take care of the island while he's away. And when he heads off to the island using his magical gold dust, he runs into Thomas, who was sent to collect him. And then he uses his gold dust again to get him inside of Thomas's cab, even though he could have just walked in there, but okay. We are then introduced to a girl named Lily, who is the granddaughter of Burnett Stone on her way to visit him. She is played by Mara Wilson, and her acting, it's fine.
You're coming with me to Grandpa's Bluebird? I know how much you like to travel.
Nothing too great, nothing too bad. In fact, that's what I want to say about most of the acting in this movie, at least from the human characters. I don't want to say anyone gave a bad performance. They all play their roles relatively convincingly, but in terms of the quality and tone of their acting throughout this movie, it's all over the damn place. And Mara Wilson's acting falls somewhere in the middle. But anyways, back on the island of Sodor, we are finally introduced to the remainder of our engines, Percy, Toby, and Henry. And much like Thomas and Gordon, their voices are just great. Kevin Frank as Henry is probably the weakest one of these three, as his voice, while fine, does seem a bit generic.
Toby's right. Diesel knows that the lost engine in the legend really exists.
Linda Ballantyne plays Percy, yes, Sailor Moon. And unlike James with Susan Roman, Linda Ballantyne is absolutely perfect as Percy. Her voice fits him wonderfully.
Without your sparkle or the lost engine, you can't travel here to help us anymore.
Comfior is the perfect Toby voice, as he gives the perfect wise but funny old man voice that we'd expect to hear from this old steam tram.
What's important is to stand up on our own wheels to Diesel.
In fact, while I'm on the topic, and while they're all here, let's talk about the engine's personalities. I think if there's one thing to say about the engines aside from their voices, is how expertly they nailed the personalities of all of them. Toby is the funny wise old man that don't take shit from no one.
Oh, Diesel won't bother with an old engine like me. He thinks I'm really useless.
Percy is frightful, young and naive, but not stupid.
Maybe those are the buffers that lead to the secret railway.
James is vain and flamboyant, going on about his shiny red paintwork.
But Mr. C. Red looks so nice against the snow.
Gordon is big, pompous, and arrogant.
You, Thomas, are small. Small, 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 teeny, weeny, weeny. And I'm a big blue engine who knows everything.
Henry is relatively kind-hearted, but very easily agitated.
My smoke box doesn't feel sunny. It feels stuffed up.
And Thomas is young and cheeky with a little bite to him, but is overall polite and kind-hearted, always willing to help a new friend, and wants to be really useful.
Hi.
Hello, Lily. Welcome to Sodor.
I'd say overall they nailed the engines, which honestly is probably the most important thing to get right. Though there is one major problem with them, and it's a problem we'll get to later, but that night, the engines are all sleeping at Tidma's sheds with Mr. Conductor. Don't know why he's staying at the sheds. And after a scene where I swear Alec Baldwin just lost his damn mind.
Go outside and play? Well, I can understand that. What do you think? Why do you keep hitting him like that? You're gonna have to have a timeout.
Diesel 10 creeps up to the sheds and starts attacking, demanding to know where the lost engine is. Mr. Conductor tries to escape using his gold dust, but it turns out he's run out of it. How convenient. Luckily, he still has one way to fend off Diesel 10.
What is that?
That's right, it's sugar, Diesel. And if I throw this in your tank, it'll seize you up for good.
That is true, by the way. So Diesel 10 retreats, but the engines are worried about Mr. Conductor losing his gold dust and wondering how he'll be able to travel between Sodor and Shining Time. And after a nightmare and Percy hearing him talk in his sleep, Mr. Conductor realizes that he has to find a way to get more gold dust. Meanwhile, back with Lily, she ends up getting on the wrong train because she was told to by this dog.
You do? Is it that one? Well, why not?
If it wasn't for the fact that we know this dog knows Mr. Conductor, she would look like a complete idiot here. Back on Sodor, Mr. Conductor begins his quest to restore his gold dust as he has to go to the windmill to get a clue. Unfortunately, he for some reason went off the beaten path and got lost, even though he could have easily taken an engine to get there. I mean, James was right there. We cut back to the engines who are worried about Mr. Conductor and can't seem to find him anywhere, as well as worried about Diesel 10 and his evil plan.
And if he finds her, I fear that will destroy us all.
What, even an engine as big as me?
Yes, Gordon, even you.
And I think it's moments like these you end up realizing how barren the island of Sodor is in this movie. Like, I'm not even talking about the fact that there are for some reason no people on the island. I'm just talking about the engines in general. There are only 6 steam engines on this whole railway in this movie. Keep in mind, this movie came out after season 5, where there were tons of engines everywhere, and the only ones who appear in this movie are our main characters, and only some of them because Edward isn't even in this movie. Yes, Edward, engine number 2, the first character of the series, is not in the first movie. That is astronomical levels of what the hell. Now, I'm not saying every single character from the show has to be in this movie, say something, and even get a big scene all to themselves. I'm pretty sure the world can survive without the Duck and Oliver graphic sex scene. Pretty sure. But it would have been nice to at least have all those guys just doing their job along in the background. It would have made this island feel more real and lived in, rather than just having this island where only like a handful of steam engines are just going around by themselves with no people and no drivers. It just makes the island, again, feel barren. Anyways, after that, we cut back to Mr. Conductor, who apparently found a note from a talking rabbit. What? And he tries eating some vegetables, and I think the scene speaks for itself.
Plane, drain, mountain, fountain.
So after that schizophrenic meltdown, he apparently comes to the conclusion that he needs to call his laid-back surfer cousin Junior, which I always found weird that people for the longest while couldn't comprehend that Junior is a name. Like, that is next level stupid. So Mr. Conductor uses a flower telephone. Did they mistake the island of Sodor for like Wonderland or something? Junior is played by Michael E. Rogers, and he's the best human character in the movie. Michael E. Rogers gives the perfect energy for this role, and it's always a joy to see him on screen. He also has kind of a little arc in this movie, going from laid-back irresponsible to actually learning to take things seriously. And I like that. It makes him a decently well-rounded and pretty memorable character.
Hello?
My cell phone's not working properly!
Oh, and then they just casually mention that there's magical buffers. No biggie. Back with Lily, she is for some reason surprised that by getting on the wrong train, she ended up on the wrong station.
Shining time? What does that mean?
But while she's at Shining Time, she ends up running into Junior, who is gathering some supplies to help out his cousin. But once he leaves, Lily is kinda stuck at Shining Time with no real way of getting to her grandpa. But luckily, the station master, Stacy Jones, played by Dee Dee Khan, who, fun fact, is actually reprising her role from Shining Time Station, offers to drive Lily to her grandpa. They end up running into him halfway there, giving directions to this biker who definitely wasn't some important character like the original main villain of the movie, who was cut out for stupid reasons because of test audiences. And Burnett takes Lily back to his house. That night, back on Sodor, Thomas and Percy are discussing how it's possible for Mr. Conductor to be able to travel between Sodor and Shining Time, and the two of them put together that means there must be a magical railway that belongs to the Lost Engine.
I think that's how he travels here, on a secret railway.
Belonging to the Lost Engine. Percy, you are clever.
But it turns out Diesel 10 ended up hearing that, and he heads off to go tell his cronies Splatter and Dodge. Luckily, Toby follows behind him. And Toby and the audience learn that Diesel 10's plan is the same plan he's had the whole damn movie. Okay, I need to talk about this. This movie likes to repeat itself. A lot. A lot of people complain that this movie is complicated, and it is and isn't. The plot of this movie is not that complicated to understand. The real problem is it doesn't explain anything. The things that are easy to understand and only need a short brief explanation are constantly hammered in over and over again. But the things that are a bit more out there and that we could use maybe just a bit more explanation for are never explained. Like, they say 4 different times that Diesel 10's plan is to find Lady and destroy her, and that will somehow destroy the other steam engines. But you want to know what they don't explain? How all the engines know of Lady, but they didn't know of the magic railroad. The magic buffers are just dropped onto us. They don't tell us how they didn't know of the railroad, but they knew of Lady and the fact that Mr. Conductor traveled between the 2 worlds. How did that all fall into legend if they knew her? It's never explained. And you know what else they don't explain? Why gold dust is so damn important. Throughout this whole movie, they're constantly talking about how they need to find gold dust, but it's overall pointless because they show us that any engine can travel through the magic railroad, so gold dust has no point. Or, you know what else they don't explain? How Burnett's stone was somehow able to get Lady through the magic railway all the way to his workshop on Muffle Mountain without Sodor coal. Later in the movie, they find out that Henry's special coal, which is something he shouldn't need at this point, and it was something that was Welsh coal, but in this they made it Sodor coal, is what is required to bring Lady back to life. But how on earth did he get Lady all the way from Sodor to Muffle Mountain without using any Sodor coal? Wouldn't that have been the first thing he tried? If you were ever thinking that, well, too bad, the movie never goes into that. I think what my point is, this movie always explains the what, but they never explain the why and how. So it ends up making everything feel pointless. And the last thing anyone wants to do is feel like they're wasting their time. Despite all that, I love this scene with Toby. He rings his bell to distract them, causing Diesel 10 to flounder like an idiot and knock the shed on them.
Benji, get back here! Benji, don't make me come up here. I hate it when you do this. Good show.
God damn, I love Toby in this movie. And after one of the funnier scenes in the movie, we get the best scene in the movie, the really useful engine segment, where we get a montage of the engines of the Northwestern Railway doing what they do best, set to the best version of the best Thomas song, Really Useful Engine.
Now he's got a brush to call his very own. He's a really useful engine we adore.
And I think, despite the criticisms I've already said and have yet to say, this is why I really like this movie. All the stuff relating to the engines and the island of Sodor, despite some of the misses, is just peak Thomas content. Some of the best you'll ever see. Just watching these engines do what they do is just so mesmerizing to me and to a lot of people. And I think that's why, despite my criticisms, I still like this movie and why so many people defend it. After that amazing montage, Thomas goes to collect some trucks of Special Island of Sodor coal for Henry, but he ends up knocking one of the trucks away, causing it to coincidentally go into, and also therefore finding, the magic buffers that lead to the magic railroad. Later, Thomas talks to Percy about this, and the two of them come to the conclusion that I just stated. And Thomas tells Percy to guard the buffers from Diesel 10. Speaking of Diesel 10, it turns out that Toby trapping him in that shed didn't really mean much, as Diesel 10 is able to find Mr. Conductor and grabs him using his hydraulic claw pinchy and threatens to drop him off of the collapsing viaduct. Luckily, after giving us the bird, Mr. Conductor was able to use a pair of pliers to break Pinchy's hydraulics, causing Diesel 10 to fling him across the island all the way to the windmill, landing safely on a pile of flour. Now, I'm not even going to talk about the fact that it was convenient that he landed right where he needed to go, or the fact that Alec Baldwin decides to start addressing the audience again.
Did you put all this here for me? You must have known that I was coming.
Please stop being self-aware. I'm more so confused on the fact that, wait, he can be launched 50 feet in the air across the island and be perfectly fine, but falling from a similar drop into water is apparently fatal? What? Anyways, without any more looking, Mr. Conductor knows exactly where to go to find the clue that he needs to start restoring his gold dust. For some reason, his family gave him a clue to get the thing they need. Why not just tell him how to get the thing they need? Back with Diesel 10, they don't explain how Pinchy got repaired. Splatter and Dodge are comedically chewing him out for letting Mr. Conductor escape, but Diesel 10 tries to act all intimidating and ends up making an idiot of himself.
I know that's gonna ruin my facial.
I love how all the other engines are just casually laughing and working in the yard with the one diesel engine that wants to destroy them all. It just goes to show how little these guys take him seriously, and that's just funny to me. Back with Lily, she ends up heading back to Shining Time Station and runs into Junior again, who's just about to make his way over to the island of Sodor. As Junior uses some of the last bit of gold dust that he has to get the two of them through the magic railroad to the island of Sodor, where they end up running into... Oh my god, Thomas is in this movie, I almost forgot. Yeah, here's another major problem with the movie. Even though I've been mainly skimming over all the human segments and mostly just talking about the Sodor stuff with all the trains, you know, what we came here to see, it cannot be overstated how little Thomas appears in this Thomas movie. Yes, for some baffling reason, Thomas the Tank Engine and his friends are inconsequential to the plot of this movie. Despite being called Thomas and the Magic Railroad, we are mostly following a bunch of human characters. This movie is an hour and a half long, and Thomas is only in just under 12 minutes of that. And obviously that means the other engines aren't gonna fare well either. I have no idea why they thought kids would be more interested in a bunch of boring humans we don't care about, rather than the talking trains. And, well, you know, turns out kids weren't interested. But it's still baffling how little the trains actually play in this movie. And some people say, oh, that's because Shining Time Station is in this movie. But not really. Shining Time Station is also barely in this movie. It's more of a plot device overall. Instead, most of this movie takes place on Muffle Mountain or random patches of shrubbery on Sodor, away from the railway. Both Sodor and Shining Time mean very little to the actual plot of this movie. Diesel 10 is the one thread keeping the island of Sodor and all the talking steam engines relevant to the plot. And that's insane to me. But you know, what this all reminds me of? Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Okay, please stay with me on this one. In this movie, we also spend most of the runtime with a bunch of boring humans we don't care about, talking about nonsensical stuff that we either don't understand or don't care for. Usually both. But when the Transformers are on screen, you know, doing what we came here to see them do, Autobots versus Decepticons blowing a bunch of shit up, the movie immediately gains 10,000 aura points. It's the exact same thing here. Most of the movie's runtime is taken up by humans we don't care about, but when the engines are on screen doing their thing, the movie is amazing. Revenge of the Fallen and Magic Railroad are the same movie. Well, at least Thomas isn't racist.
No, Diesel! I'm sure Sir Topham Hatt means a really useful steamy. You'll never be that.
Ooh, it's not really looking good for you, Thomas. Anyways, while Thomas doesn't really like Junior that much, he politely welcomes Lily to Sodor and offers to take the two of them to the windmill, abandoning his coaches Annie and Clarabelle.
Annie, Clarabelle, I'll send Percy back to fetch you.
We've heard that one before.
And once they reach the windmill, they end up finally finding Mr. Conductor. Well, that was easy. But unfortunately, Junior can't help himself but to get into trouble and climbs onto the propellers of the windmill and gets himself launched all the way onto the roof of Diesel 10. How convenient. As Diesel 10 takes Junior on a wild ride.
Mr. Kahuna.
Really? Watch me.
Hang on tight, moon doggy.
Yeah!
We then cut back to Burnett Stone, who is told that Lily is missing, and he doesn't really react to that. So we cut back to Percy, who is trying to find the magic buffers, but ends up seeing that Splatter and Dodge has beaten him there. He also gets to see this unholy abomination.
Howdy, partner. Excuse me, coming through, pardon me.
Oh, that's just nothing.
I want that thing out of my Thomas movie. The three of them end up getting scared, and Percy goes off to tell the news to Thomas that Diesel 10 is planning to destroy the Magic Railroad, which means they need to get Lily home as fast as possible. And then it's decided that Thomas will take Lily through the Magic Railroad. Again, kind of proving that they don't really need gold dust if any engine can travel through it, but that's besides the point. Thomas, despite being worried that something could happen, happily agrees to take Lily home, and on his way to the Magic Buffers, we get to see this unholy thing again.
Follow me, partner. Woo! Right this way to Bufferville. Just a walk in the park.
Get it away from me, as they travel through the Magic Buffers into the Magic Railroad. And they end up seeing that missing coal truck. And while I could say that it doesn't make sense for Thomas to somehow go past it and then go back to couple up to it with there being no junction or siding in this place, I don't care about that because I'm too busy listening to the music. Oh yeah, I should probably talk about the music. Rather than using the show's main composers of Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell, the movie opted to have a new composer, Hummy Man, and holy hell did he pump out one banger of a soundtrack. This orchestral soundtrack is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard come out of Thomas, and that's saying a lot considering the show's usual music. Though I will admit I wish this soundtrack used more Thomas motifs throughout it instead of just the main theme and Really Useful Engine, it's still the main theme and Really Useful Engine. So with the coal truck in tow, Thomas and Lily end up finally making their way through the Magic Railroad all the way to Muffle Mountain. Lily heads off to go find her grandpa, but Thomas ends up getting blown off the side of the mountain, leaving the coal truck behind and somehow falling back into the Magic Railroad in the middle of the field. Okay. Lily reunites with Burnett, and as usual, he doesn't seem to have a reaction, but they end up having Patch go fetch the special island of Sodor coal, thinking that it might actually be the key to get Lady steaming again. Meanwhile, back on Sodor, turns out that Diesel 10 has been racing around the island with Junior on his roof all night, and he ends up going into the smelters, stopping right in front of James, launching Junior onto James's cab roof. As Diesel 10 seems to have James and Junior cornered, with no way of escaping, no gold dust, and the only way to go is backwards into the smelting pit. But luckily, Junior managed to scrounge up just enough gold dust to get him and James out of there.
James the Brains, get us out of here!
Now we are!
What the?
Which may be good for the moment, but now, both Junior and Mr. Conductor are completely out of gold dust. Boo-hoo. Back with Burnett and Lily, they end up using the special island of Sodor coal, which actually is the key to get Lady steaming again, as the two of them, as well as Patch and the dog Mutt, end up traveling on Lady into the Magic Railroad, and with her steaming again, the magic is all brought back, and Lady gets a face and a voice of her very own, as she is played by Britt Allcroft herself.
So Burnett, you didn't forget about magic. It's safe inside you.
And once again, I could make some argument about none of this making any sense. All I care about is listening to the music when Thomas comes back because...
You found her! And she's beautiful!
God, Really Useful Engine is such a good song. Anyways, they end up coming back through the Magic Railroad on Sodor, right as Diesel 10 is passing by and sees the lady. And he's ready to give chase, but Splatter and Dodge betray him and just choose not to for some reason. Anyways, they're out of the movie now.
Emphatically.
Yeah, what does that mean?
I have no idea.
It's a good word.
As it's time for our final battle/chase sequence. And yeah, this scene is awesome, I don't care.
You can run, but you can't hide! Right, Pinchy? Pinchy's hungry!
Get back!
Even though I do kinda wish the music for this chase sequence was the Runaway theme, I still love the music they use, and once again, the shots and the sound effects of these two little steam engines going as fast as they can to escape this heavy metal monster is really good and actually works enough to get the heart pounding.
I like my lunch steam!
Eventually though, they end up coming across that unstable viaduct from earlier, and Lady and Burnett pass it with ease, and Thomas ends up getting to make the epic leap across. Just barely making it.
Well done, Thomas! Well done!
But where does that leave Diesel 10?
Oh well, nice time of the year for a cruise.
Now that everything's all winding down, Mr. Conductor and Junior end up working out the mystery of the clue that they were given and figure out that it's all connected to Lady and the magical shavings she gives out when she's puffing along, which, when mixed with the water from the well, is just enough to make a limitless supply of gold dust. Again, whoop-de-doo. But we do get some good happy endings for some of our characters, namely Mr. Conductor and Junior, as Junior ends up being responsible and getting a job as the next main conductor. And Mr. Conductor gets to be congratulated by Sir Topham Hatt, as everyone else heads back to Shining Time, all living happily, as we get this admittedly nice final shot of Thomas puffing along into the sunset, even though it's trying to imply he was the main character of this movie, which he wasn't.
Time for all of us to go home. Just like Thomas.
And the movie ends on that note. I want to like Thomas and the Magic Railroad. And I do. But I also kind of hate it. Let me explain. Yes, everything Thomas related that this movie does, it knocks it out of the park. The island of Sodor looks beautiful, the model work is as great as ever, the engines absolutely steal the show whenever they're on screen, the voices, for the most part, are all really good and are basically my definitive voices for the characters. The characters of the engines themselves are also all on point, and the soundtrack is absolutely breathtaking. And there's even some stuff unique to this movie that I like. Obviously, Diesel 10 is an amazingly hilarious villain, and I actually really like Mr. Conductor and Junior. I find them to be very entertaining characters. When this movie gets things right, it gets them right. But in saying all that, what this movie gets wrong, it gets horrifically wrong. Because all of those compliments I gave are buried 6 feet under behind a nonsensical story, stilted acting, a large focus on a bunch of new human characters that will never be mentioned again, and the engines themselves being completely inconsequential to the plot of this movie. And once again, it lies one of the movie's biggest flaws. Thomas and the Magic Railroad is not a movie about Thomas the Tank Engine and his friends. It is a movie about a magical man and his cousin trying to solve a needlessly convoluted mystery for unexplained reasons, and a little girl trying to reconcile with her estranged grandfather, all that just so happens to have talking trains in it. And that's the problem. But despite that, I think there is one bigger problem with this movie, and it all comes down to trying to cross Thomas the Tank Engine over with Shining Time Station, and therefore adding in this magical element to it that was not there before. Thomas the Tank Engine isn't magical. The island of Sodor is not meant to be this magical Narnia type world. Yes, it is a made up island, but it's also meant to be a real island in that world. The Northwestern Railway is supposed to function like a regular railway, with the engines doing their jobs, having timetables to follow, and all that stuff. Yeah, it's not one-to-one with real life. I mean, for one, the trains talk, but that's meant to be just how it is in that version of our world. Real engines like City of Truro, Flying Scotsman, and Stepney are just regular characters in that world. Most of them have faces and have visited Sodor, even having connections to other engines on Sodor. So when this movie comes along and says, oh no, the trains only are alive because magic, and they only exist in some pocket dimension separate from the real world, and you can only get there via gold dust and a magic railway, that doesn't just get a few things wrong, that just destroys the rules completely. The island of Sodor is not real anymore. Nothing is real anymore. Everything that the books and those first 5 seasons establish mean nothing now. Now, I'm not 100% against Thomas having magic in it, but doing it like this is just flat out wrong. And while I'll always have respect for Britt Allcroft, I will still always question what even was the idea with this movie. We are apparently getting another Thomas movie eventually, if we are to believe the prophecy, and who knows, maybe that one will actually follow the rules of this world and feel more like a Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends movie, because that's what I want it to be. We don't need it to be about magical humans. We need it to be about that blue train with a face, because he and his friends are what it's all about. Now, I'm your average bonehead Jay, and I wish you all good night. Oh, you're still here. Well, since you stuck around for this long, you might as well like and subscribe, comment if you're feeling really daring. And while you're at it, you might as well follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jayskeletyn. Links down below. And if you just want to see more, you can check out the playlists or look at my last video. Now, thanks for watching, and if you need me, I'm going back to bed